Where do the angels call home? 'Cause there are messengers among us, but I know not where they roam. And where do the demons reside? 'Cause something sinister's inside me since the day I've been alive. It feels like the center of the universe. It feels like the narrow space between heaven and earth. Feels like a sparrow falling to the ground. Feels like the cosmos hung its head down and cried.
Johnny finally awoke when they started the engines of the heavy equipment. Red-eyed and still hanging onto his grandfather's star, he slid from his bed to lean against Dave's leg. Dave was holding a conversation with Henry as he cut some potatoes. The camp had just grown from 6 to 16, which meant he was going to have to prep all the food earlier than usual. Johnny was listening to his grandfather's voice say something about them and something called physics. He had no idea what all that was, but Grandpa's lap was looking a lot better than Dave's leg. "What do you think they're going to find out there, Henry?" Dave asked as he dumped another pile of potatoes into the sink to rinse. "Unknown," Henry responded. Henry paused to think about it. There are not too many possibilities as to what this could all be. Reaching down, Henry pulled Johnny up a little closer to himself as he was reflecting on something in his mind. With a long pause and a distant, faraway look on his face soon caused Dave to ask, "What are you thinking about, Henry?" Henry jerked his head slightly as if he was coming back to reality. "I was thinking about a science lecture I was ordered to attend back just before I became a major. A scientist was discussing the latest quantum physics theories. Most of it was way over my head, but some guy from New Mexico talked about a theory he had about breaking the time barrier." Henry kissed Johnny on the head. "I am starting to wonder if he pulled it off." Dave lifted the washed potatoes out of the sink. "Maybe you should give that guy a call." "That's a lot easier said than done, Dave. I was so bored in that meeting, I blocked most of it out, including the man's name," Henry responded back. Dave moved the washed potatoes to a cooler and began working on some carrots. "Do you really think it's time travel, Henry? What if some old Indian had a vision or something?" He paused to wipe off his cutting board into the trash. "This whole thing seems really far-fetched to me." "As I see it, this could turn into one of two possibilities. One, nothing else will be found, and I will have a lot of questions to answer in Washington with tons of paperwork ahead of me. Or we will find evidence to at least prove some measure of it, and I will still be answering endless questions as this becomes one of the most classified projects in existence." Looking down at Johnny, he relaxed a bit. "Either way, I don't think I am going to get to retire next year." Henry was thinking about changing the subject when Andrew walked into the camp, taking his hat off as he sat down. Henry and Dave looked at him as Dave spoke up. "I thought you were going to work at the site today?" Andrew shook his head. "Nope. Major Payne is starting to rip all the brush out. I think he would take the opportunity to run me over if I let him. Can I have some water?" Henry's eyebrows narrowed. "Major Payne?" Dave chuckled as he flicked some carrot peelings into a bucket. "Yeah, I forgot about that name. That's what some of the men called Watson when they were under his command, back when Andrew was in." "Yep, a well-deserved name at that," Andrew responded as he noticed Dave pointing to an icebox with his knife, as if to say, "Get it yourself." Henry smiled as he thought about it. "I can see it. Never thought about it like that. But I can see it." Andrew was putting some ice into a cup while he told them about the Major's plan to blade off all the brush with a dozer to the other side of the trail. All the while, Megan is playing the overprotective mom with her dig, warning him about disturbing the petroglyphs on the rock wall. "Personally, I think the only reason Major Payne is putting up with Megan is because she's your daughter," Andrew remarked as he sat down. "And it's a bit of a pleasure right now to see someone else giving the Major a little bit of pain." By noon, Henry decided to walk up to see how the project was progressing. Josh and Andy were both back at the mess tent, so Henry decided he would let the Major know it was time to break for lunch. As he approached the worksite, a guard saluted him. Returning the salute, Henry strolled across the newly levelled ground that once held brush and rocks. Megan saw him out of the corner of her eye, turned, and walked toward him. Major Watson was tapped on his shoulder by Sergeant Buckings to let him know the General just walked in. Henry noticed it all as he drew closer, only to stop as Megan met him with Watson hot on her heels. Before Megan got a chance to say anything, Henry looked at Watson and informed him, "It's lunchtime, Major." "Yes, sir," Watson responded back. "It's hot out. I want the men to return for lunch." Henry ordered. "Sir," Watson asked. "You have your orders, Major?" The General informed him, looking a little frustrated. "Yes, sir," the Major responded back as he turned and yelled at Buckings to bring everything to a stop. Megan stood silently next to her father as the men slowly filed out. When the last man left, Henry looked at his daughter and said, "You really should wear sunscreen out here." "It's slimy and makes the sand stick to me. I can't stand the stuff. Besides, I have my hat," Megan informed him. Henry just looked at her. He'd had the same argument with her many times, and it always ended the same. At this point, he realized her leaving the army, because she was pregnant with Johnny, was a God-sent blessing. "So did you find anything yet?" Henry asked. With a grin and a raised eyebrow, Megan responded back. "Walk with me, General. So far they have just been getting the area ready, but we ran into a snag." "Oh? What's that?" he responded back as they neared the rock face. Megan stopped just short of the wall. "Well, we are standing on a really big boulder," Megan remarked, as she kicked the dirt and gravel aside with her boot to show him. "And if you look up," pointing with her finger to the edge of the upper rock wall, "that's where it came from. And now it's in our way." Henry looked around at the size of it before he spoke. "And you can't just get the dozer in here and push it because it will mostly destroy the very evidence we are trying to find," Megan interrupted. "So how do we fix it?" her father asked. Megan walked to the outer edge, away from the rock wall. "We dig a big hole on this side of it and roll it away from the wall." Henry looked around and then at his daughter. "Sounds good. I hope this is all worth it." Megan's dirt-covered face smiled. "It is. Look at this." She motioned with her hand. Henry followed her to the U.S. Army logo. They bent down and she brushed away the dirt and sand in the crack where the boulder rested itself on the wall. "What do you see?" Megan asked with a little glee in her voice. Henry stooped down as low as he could while putting on his glasses. There on the rock wall before his eyes was the number 2. "2, I see the number 2? Oh my, it's a 2!" Astonished, Henry quickly looked back up at Megan. "And I think there's more down there, but I can't see what it is." "I know," Megan confidently answered. Watson's team worked hard all that afternoon, clearing away the earth next to the boulder in an effort to roll it. It turned out to be larger than they realized, and so were the smaller rocks that held it in place. Ultimately, General Mullins ordered them back to the camp before they were done. It was hard work, and he knew they needed the rest. Dave ordered Josh and Andrew to drive to town for more supplies. Megan oversaw the project, and her dad spent most of his afternoon either on the phone or helping Dave entertain Johnny, who had a new lizard that he also named Lorenzo. Henry's growing concern over the project after clearly seeing the number 2 in the stone left his mind continually thinking about time travel and the what-ifs. After everyone settled down for the night, he rolled over to see Megan was in her cot, but not yet asleep. In a low voice, Henry spoke. "Megan?" "Yes," Megan responded back. "This may be the raving of an old man, but what if we, the army, have a man out there, somewhere, trapped in the past?" Pausing for a moment to see the look on her face. "And what if the army sent him there?" Henry asked. What would be the point of sending him 3,000 years into the past? "I can see 20, 50, or even 100, but thousands," Megan responded back. Frustrated, Henry rolled on his back as he responded back, "I know, it doesn't make sense, but what if?" Pausing to collect his thoughts. What if it wasn't planned? What if it was an accident? Like I said, long on questions, short on answers. But with the progress we made today, I suspect we might have a few answers tomorrow, Megan remarked as she closed her tired eyes. Megan was too much like her mother, and Henry knew that meant the conversation had just come to an end. He lay there looking at the tent ceiling for an hour before dozing off to the sound of crickets and a gentle wind making its way through the canyon. In a dream, Henry heard a noise that sounded like a crash. It caused him to jump forward into the sand and rocks near his feet. Henry rolled onto his side with the hot sun blinding his face. He suddenly grew very concerned and got up yelling, "Where are you?" "Over here," came the voice. Henry turned his head to see Johnny standing near the rock wall next to the US Army logo. "Hurry up, Grandpa, hurry!" Johnny exclaimed. Johnny's hand was in the center of the logo as he pushed off from the rock wall, running. Henry rushed to keep up with him. "Hurry up, Grandpa, hurry!" A strange noise filled Henry with fear. Turning his head as he ran, he could clearly see a flock of birds coming down from the canyon walls. They looked like liquid silver, shining bright in the afternoon light. Terror overwhelmed him at the sight of them. He ran harder with his grandson past the bodies of many dead American Indian people. He could see by the looks on their faces that they were full of fear when they died. They were not dressed in modern clothes, but the tribal clothing of the past. Henry only gave it a fleeting thought as he and Johnny ran past them, hoping to not become one of them. As they reached the crest of the little hill, there were no canyons or deserts before them, but the burnt-out remains of a major city. He could see the silver birds destroying everything. Their beaks had teeth, and with them, they would rip the top of skyscrapers or bite a person in two. Some birds stood on the ground with heaps of dead soldiers at their feet. The sight of this stopped Henry in his tracks, as he felt he knew the dead men. Johnny pulled on Henry's pant leg. "Grandpa, come! We can't stop now." As soon as Johnny yelled it, the closest bird slowly turned his head, and Henry could see his eyes. The eyes were aflame with fire, and they were growing brighter. It was a sight that made him feel as if he was about to die. "Sandstorm!" yelled a voice. And with that, Henry woke up from his dream covered in a cold sweat and feeling the effects of fear slowly leaving him. It was Dave who yelled, and he slapped Henry on the leg as he ran by him. "Come on, we need to close the tent flaps to keep the sand out." In the early morning light as the wind increased, Henry groggily struggled to his feet and toward the side of the mess tent. He could hear Dave yelling at Josh and Andrew in the tent next door to button things up. Major Watson's voice from the larger tent could be heard over the wind yelling at Buckings to start closing the flaps. They managed to get the 3 tents closed down with only a little sand in a few people's eyes. After a moment or so, Megan offered to help Dave with the morning meal. Walking past her father, Megan spoke up. "Don't worry, it doesn't last long around here, not like Iraq." Henry nodded. "Good to know," he remarked as he started to head toward the coffee when his cell phone rang. Slowing down as he pulled out his phone, Henry's right eyebrow raised as he moved away from the coffee pot to the back of the tent for a little privacy. With Dave, Megan, and Henry, along with Johnny, all sleeping in the mess tent, that helped to afford Dave a little assistance this morning, but it also meant everyone else in the other tents would not get their coffee until the storm ended. As people moved around, Megan changed what she was doing and began moving the sleeping cots to make room for everyone to sit at the tables as Dave began cooking the ham. Talking on his phone, Henry looked over at his grandson, Johnny with a grin, who, of course, slept through the morning's excitement as usual. Dave and Megan almost had breakfast ready when the storm began to die down. Henry's phone call ended, so he walked over to join the others and enjoy his coffee. Dave took a broom and pushed it against the tent walls to make some of the sand slide off. Megan noticed the look on her father's face as she walked over to the door to yell, "Breakfast!" to the camp. "Wow, what a look! That must have been a real humdinger of a phone call," Megan remarked as she picked up a spatula. Henry barely heard, but finally acknowledged her. "Oh, no, that was just Samuel's back at the office requesting an update," he remarked as his gaze wandered. Megan continued working but kept an eye on her dad as Johnny crawled out of bed to sit in Grandpa's welcoming lap. Finally Megan spoke, but in a low, concerned voice. "Mom used to tell me that you would have intense dreams, and when you had them, they would take you far away, lost in thought. She told me if it happens again, I should give you your space, but not let you stew too long because it's not good for you." She was a wise woman. I wish she was here, Henry answered back as he looked down at his grandson. But I am not as young as I was then, and I would like to think I can manage myself better now. Taking a drink of his coffee, Henry held it in his hand in front of him while resting his elbow on the table. I haven't had a dream like that since you were a little girl. Noticing a few people starting to arrive for breakfast, Henry gave Megan a look as the two of them mentally quietly tabled the subject for later. Tending to Johnny as Major Watson, Dave, and the General talked business, Megan sat at the corner of the table. The crew of servicemen filed in and out with plates of food as Josh took his food outside to sit alone on a rock, enjoying the morning sun on his face. Some of the men finished eating and began cleaning sand off the equipment. Josh flicked part of his eggs toward a small lizard that was near his feet. You better eat that and run, little guy, before Johnny finds you, Josh remarked as he gave the lizard a wink when he noticed Megan and the General stepping out for a morning stroll, talking in quiet tones as they walked past him. Josh's mind wandered to the dig site, wondering what all this was about. Was it really time travel, like he overheard some people saying, or was it something else? He knew they only had about 2 hours worth of work before they could roll the boulder out. Josh also knew they needed to get all the sand out of the equipment before they could start. But since he was no longer in the army, he took joy in knowing some other person would get that job today. Looking back down at the lizard to see, the egg was gone, and the lizard waiting for more. He smiled and said to it, "Sorry, that's it for today." With that, Josh got up and wandered back to the mess tent. Major Watson and Sergeant Buckings came out the door before Josh walked in. Watson greeted him with a head nod. "Mr. Williams?" "Major," Josh back as he nodded back without stopping. "Williams," nodded Buckings. Watson stood there outside the mess tent, looking over his sand-covered encampment with Buckings waiting at his side. Buckings spoke up in an effort to cut the silence. "If we stay here very long, we are going to need a bigger mess tent." "Yes, Buckings, but I have no intention of being around that long. The General's stone markings are interesting, and I am sure there is going to be a fascinating story to tell someone someday. But this is a job for people with hand shovels and little brooms who like to look at dried bones," Watson sarcastically informed him. Buckings, feeling a little rebuked, responded back, "Yes, sir." The Major then spoke up just after clearing his throat. "Come on, let's get this show on the road." Turning a little to the side, Watson walked up to the dig site and yelled at a man standing near the dozer. "Private, let's roll," Watson ordered, as held his index finger high in the air, making a circling motion indicating his desire that they all get moving. About 2 hours later, Watson sent word via Private Huckins to the General that they were ready to roll the stone. The General thanked the young man and told him to return, saying they would be there directly. Megan, Dave, Henry, and even Johnny walked up to the site. By this time, everyone was standing around waiting for the big moment. Ropes, chains, and hooks were all attached to the far side of the stone next to the canyon wall, and the big hole had been prepared for it to all fall into. The Major looked at Megan and then at Buckings. "Sergeant, are we clear?" "Yes, sir. All personnel are out of the way, sir," Buckings responded back. Major Watson turned to the General. "General, it's your show. Will you give the word?" Henry grinned and responded back. "No, Major. It's Megan's show." Megan smiled, stepped forward, and looked at Watson. "Pull it, Major." Watson's radio then chirped as he gave the order. "Pull it." The dozer's engine roared to full power and began to move. With each tug, the stone did wiggle some. On the third tug, they heard a crack come from underneath the stone as it easily slid from its ancient position to its new resting place. As it dropped into the hole, the air from underneath displaced, kicking up a large volume of dust. Several whooped, hollered, and clapped each other's hands as it hit. Everyone was impressed with the sight of it, including Johnny, who was soon handed off to Dave. Megan was not willing to wait for the dust to settle, and quickly started moving around the outer edge of the hole. Hot on her tail was the Major, Buckings, Andrew, and the General as they all carefully made their way. It soon became necessary to jump down into the hole on top of the boulder to get to the canyon wall. As the last of dust cleared before them was the same US Army logo, but below it, about 24 inches, read the following message: 2.5 clicks north by northeast. Proceed 200 yards in, de oppresso liber. Henry was the first to speak. "Oh my God!" leaving his mouth hanging open. Andrew, stunned, said, "What does de oppresso liber mean?" Watson paused before speaking. "It's Latin, son. It means to liberate the oppressed. It's the motto of the 19th Special Forces Group of the Utah Army National Guard." "I didn't know the National Guard had special forces," Andrew remarked. "They do," Watson responded back as he leaned in to get a closer look. Buckings then asked, "Now what do we do?" "It means, Sergeant Buckings, that you better put in that requisition for a bigger mess tent," Watson informed him. As soon as the reality of everything sank in, Megan was almost running back to the camp. She found her laptop and turned it on. As it powered up, other people began to file into the mess tent. Henry came in asking Megan if she had a plan. "I do." Megan quickly responded back. "What is it?" Henry inquired. "It's called Google Earth. I paid for a full version a few years ago. I want to see where we are going next," Megan responded back. The Major looked at Buckings and barked his orders with his index finger pointing outside. "I want 2 Humvees ready to go. Water, food, maps, and anything else you can shove into it. Go." Megan spoke up and motioned to her screen. "Looks like the direct route is no good. We can take the main road over here, then this dirt road, and then from here we're on foot." She informed them as she transferred the information to her handheld GPS, closing her laptop. Megan looked at her dad with a grin. "Let's go." The next several minutes felt like hours to everyone. They had to drive several miles out and around simply because no other roads were available. The general spent most of his time on his phone talking and sending photos to various people in Washington. Soon, they were off the main road. Dust kicked up as they dropped from the main road to dirt. Fighting the urge, Megan wanted to take her Humvee beyond that, but the road had ended, blocked by upright slabs of stone just a few feet apart. The sight of it, like most things in these canyon lands, was impressive. Vertical stone walls, only a few feet apart and a few feet thick. Taller than most houses, they worked in a strange way to guide the breezes that came along in the desert. The breeze in their faces was refreshing with the scent of wild sage as they looked at the walls of stone. It felt like stepping into another world for a moment. After traveling a while on foot between the stones, everything around them opened up a bit more to a larger area with a deer trail leading down to the other side. "Are we here?" Henry asked. "Nope, but we're close," Megan answered back as she watched her GPS. "I'm thinking it's beyond that point over there." Moving forward, Megan led them into a larger, quite spacious area with a lot of rubble from the crumbling canyon walls. Everyone stopped and looked around at the sight of it all. A large black crow then flew past them as a few lizards scurried out of their way. It looked remote. Felt remote. It was remote. The Major looked at Megan. "Okay, Megan, it's still your show. What are we looking for?" Megan kept looking up at the canyon walls. "I really don't know. Something out of place, I would assume." "It's a big place," Henry commented as he turned around and looked at Major Watson. "Major, this place just became the main area of interest. We need to shut down our former camp, secure it, and bring everything here." "Yes, sir," responded the Major. "Oh, and Major, we do not have enough men to inspect this place. Find more volunteers for Operation Lorenzo," the General informed him. "Yes, General," Watson responded back with a head nod. Within an hour, the first Humvee had arrived with supplies from the old camp. By mid-afternoon, a helicopter was dropping off another load from the local base. The General already had his own tent and a makeshift desk for his laptop. He spent most of his time that evening doing video chats with officers back east. Megan, Josh, and Andrew spent the remainder of the day hiking up and down the hillsides, searching, inspecting, and rolling stones despite the heat. The army finished erecting lighting in the camp just as evening was coming on. The 3 of them staggered in to get their first meal since breakfast. Buckings looked from the table and asked them if they found anything. "Indian petroglyphs, hundreds of them. The place is full of them, but nothing we wouldn't expect to see here, Josh answered back. The problem is that what we are looking for may be underground like the last place. We simply don't know, Andrew added. Megan, who had shoved way too much food in her mouth and was attempting to chew, just nodded a confirming yes. Johnny was already fast asleep after such an exciting day of men and big trucks. For that, Megan was thankful, because she was ready for bed as well. Sergeant Buckings walked up to Megan as she was eating. "Ma'am, the Major wanted me to report that we will be ready for a full-scale search in the morning." Megan nodded at him while waving her hand in a sweeping motion, indicating she wanted him to leave. Normally her mind would be occupied trying to figure out the next day's activities, but not tonight. She had rolled a bazillion rocks today and suffered way too many adrenaline spikes due to the snakes she found underneath them. Her only thoughts now were food and a soft pillow. The morning came way too soon for Megan and her two helpers. The sun was not quite up as people filed into the mess tent for breakfast. The General and his staff were all sitting at the officers' table, with Major Watson discussing the next steps, when Megan flopped into a seat across from her father. The General sat there, looking at his sunburnt daughter. Dave walked by as Megan looked up and calmly asked, "Food and coffee?" Dave set a tube of sunscreen down in front of her. "I said food and coffee, not a tube of goop." Henry looked at her and announced, "Megan, you're as red as a stop sign, and you're obviously suffering from dehydration. Those bruises and cuts on your arms and legs need to be cleaned and dressed. You have pushed yourself too hard. Therefore, you will rest until at least noon, drink plenty of water, and use sunscreen." Protesting with all the coldness Megan could muster, "I'm not in the army anymore, and I am not a little girl, so you can't order me." "True on both. Your stiff neck is going to kill you yet. However, these men here do follow my orders. Major, you will be personally responsible to make sure my daughter uses sunscreen every day and is well hydrated," the General informed him. The Major, who up to this point was finding this all very entertaining, almost choked on his coffee. He turned his head, looking at the General with a "why me" look. If Megan was growing more mad, it was well hidden due to her already reddened face. As the General stood up to leave, Henry looked over at Watson one last time. "And Major, she will also remain in the shade until after lunch is served, and she has eaten it." After breakfast, Watson gave out the team deployments, and 80 men started crawling over the rocks. Some teams carried sensor equipment like metal detectors searching for anything out of place. The cool of the morning had long since been replaced by the increasing heat of midday. The local reptiles had retreated beneath the rocks, and most of the men had already refilled their canteens several times. The red stone walls were starting to look more and more like the ruins of some forgotten and nameless ancient city. All this fueled the speculation and rumours that were travelling around the camp. Some wondered if the military had a secret division of time travellers who ran around altering time. Others heard that we'd stolen the technology from Russia and were fighting a secret time war. And that's why it took us so long to win the Revolutionary War, because England was backed by Russian agents. Major Watson overheard some of the rumours. At first he laughed, but then he realised his men were serious. He called a few of his men together and ordered a stop to it, calling it a stupid collection of children's stories invented by people who had spent too much time in the sun. "Maybe you old women can find Elvis and Hitler while you're out there and see if they can get you an ice cream cone. Now get back to work," Watson barked as he pointed to the world behind him. During lunch, Megan sat on the far side of the mess tent away from her father. She had eaten very little and never made eye contact with him. Johnny tried to get his mother to move so that they could all sit together, but failed. Most of the men finished eating and headed back out. Megan's table was long since empty, and she knew she could no longer avoid what she was ordered to do. So Megan got up and passed by a soldier standing in line. She did it in such a way that no one from the officer's table could see her scrape her remaining food onto his plate. He looked up, puzzled, and was about to speak when she put her finger to her lips to indicate silence. Then she walked over to Major Watson, who was sitting next to her father. "All clean, sir," May I go outside and play now? Megan asked with a snarky attitude. Major Watson looked at her plate and then at her face. With a sigh, Watson asked, "Where's your sunscreen?" She tossed her plate onto the table, making a loud noise, and pulled the dreaded tube of goop out of her pocket. Without breaking eye contact with the Major, she spread it on her face, arms and legs, and put it back in her pocket. "Happy now, Major Payne?" That comment took Watson back a little. As he opened his eyes a little wider, everyone at the table and a few in the room got acquired an "oh no" look on their faces. Henry looked at his daughter and spoke up. "Megan!" "Shut up," Megan responded back with a snap. Turning in his seat, Henry spoke up. Megan, why do you do this? You have put yourself up on a dangerous ledge. How can I hope to talk you down when you won't let me in?" Megan turned on her heels toward Henry. "Like you talked Dan down?" With that, she stormed out. Henry's face was saddened, realizing all the progress he thought they had made in the last few days had just evaporated like water in the desert. For Henry, it felt like everything just went numb around him. Sounds became dull, colors muted. When Watson finally spoke, he realized the tent was empty except for Watson and Dave, who were now sitting directly across from him. They just sat there, not saying anything. Henry looked down at his cup. "I suppose you're wondering why Megan is the way she is. And what all that was about. When I got married, a long time ago, I didn't know anything about being a father. So as a young second lieutenant, I defaulted to the only system I knew that worked, the US Army. I ran our household with a strong hand." Turning his cup slowly in his hands, in time we had 2 children, Dan, who you just heard about, and then our daughter, Megan. We were strong. We had respect in the house. It was clean and spotless, but we did not have love in the house, and a house without love is meaningless, as I learned too late in life after Dan died. Henry continued to turn his cup as he explained. "I suppose Megan blames me for that, and she rightfully should. I was grooming Dan for a life in the service, but I couldn't see that it wasn't the life for him. The more I pushed, the more he got in trouble. The more trouble he got into, the tougher I got. Until one day, he just wasn't there. That's when Megan really started acting up towards me. About a year later, there was a train wreck. It slid off the tracks near Seattle. A big mess. A lot of people died. The police figured Dan was one of the homeless people involved. They never found a body, just his wallet. My wife grew cold, and that was the day Megan started calling me General." Henry stopped playing with his cup, took the last drink out of it, and set it back down. Later, in an effort to show she could do everything better than me, she joined the army. It was fine at first, but then she met Tom. Lieutenant Thomas Becker, the love of her life. Both of them were second lieutenants and served in Iraq. They got married as soon as they got back, and she got pregnant, almost the next day. Megan softened and even started calling me Dad again. She left the army to give birth to little Johnny, and they moved into our house when the army sent Tom back to Iraq. Dave looked at Henry's cup. "Want a refill?" "Please," Henry responded back. Dave refilled his cup and Henry continued talking. We got word that Tom's Humvee was destroyed, along with another that was a part of a convoy. That left Megan, as the only parent to a 1.5-year-old boy. Josh and Andrew brought Tom's body back to the States. After the funeral, I was sitting at my desk looking over old paperwork when I found a copy of Tom's orders for Iraq. I realized that they were part of a large group of men whom I signed the orders for. Megan found out, and on that day, she started calling me General again. "Wow, and what did your wife do?" Dave asked with amazement. "Jeanette died from cancer a year after Dan," Watson responded, as he looked at his old friend, the General, who simply nodded his head. The camp was fairly quiet for the rest of the day. Most avoided Megan, so she worked alone except for Josh and Andrew. They both knew how to deal with her silence, as they had experienced it before. Nothing significant was found, so everyone retired to the evening meal and then their bunks. Henry did not get to sit in his depression for long. Washington had questions and was pushing for a deadline on the project. Night had come and brought with it a cloudless sky. The stars were on full parade with a thin crescent moon overhead. The guard change took place, and the replacement took his position near the general's tent. He looked over and noted the general lying on his cot with a small black book in his hands, reading under a dim light. Turning around, the guard manned his post.
It feels like it's all in my hands. The love of God eternal and the finite hate of man. But I gotta get up and go forth, 'cause something's blooming in the desert where everything was scorched. It feels like the center of the universe. It feels like the narrow space